my daughter had just at 5 and 6 in kindergarten had stopped just wanting to go to school. We were crying every day. She was, she's so smart. She understood that she could not read, and she started comparing herself. And I started to see the self-esteem go down. And that's the most important thing, is that we have to keep our kids and their self-esteem up. And she did, and we got in and we moved to Atlanta for 2 years to go to the school.
I'm Nicole Holcomb, attorney by day and podcaster by night, a former educator, school counselor, and administrator, and mom to a 9-year-old daughter with dyslexia, who loves all things Harry Potter, Minecraft, and science. A few years ago, she was identified with dyslexia, and our life seemed to turn upside down for a while, quite literally. I created the Dyslexia Mom Life podcast to help you navigate the upside down journey of dyslexia. You got this. If you're wanting to thrive as a mom in this dyslexia journey, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Mother's Day may be celebrated one day of the year, but here on the Dyslexia Mom Life podcast, we are celebrating moms for the entire month of May. Today, I'm talking to one of the 8 amazing warrior moms who are sharing their personal parenting dyslexia journey with us. Grab your earbuds and enjoy learning from moms who are taking you behind the scenes of parenting dyslexic kiddos. Welcome, Cassie Blakely, to the Dyslexia Mom Life podcast. Thank you so much for being here, and we look so forward to sharing your story with moms, and just thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, the theme in May is really about, celebrating moms. And we talked a little bit about this offline, and the month of May, I really want to highlight moms and share and celebrate moms who, what I call invisible parenting. There's so many things we're doing behind the scenes. I mean, all moms really, right? But for moms raising children with dyslexia, because there's just not the same amount of awareness, not everyone is even aware of what it looks like. And so we want to kind of pull the curtain back on that. But we also, for the month of May, I want to celebrate moms who, we're out there doing it. We're out there doing the work. We're working with our children. And then many of us have also chosen the path of advocacy, or to partner with parents, or to, work as coaches. And I really want to celebrate that work as well, and let people know, we talked a little bit offline, that you're not alone, and we've made mistakes too, and we want to share those. So just wanted to give a little bit of backdrop to what we're talking about today, but really, the month of May is going to be about sharing stories and sharing your family story, and, also giving some, parenting advice as far as things that have worked for us. And so we'll talk a little bit about that toward the end of the show. But I'd love to start off with you, if you don't mind, Cassie, sharing, your story as far as, let's kind of break it down a little bit though. Let's start at the beginning with, I know there's some dyslexia in your family as far as your husband, but when you were first realizing there's some signs here. So can we start kind of early on in the journey and kind of progress through there?
Absolutely. Well, I am dyslexic. I was never officially diagnosed growing up. I was finally diagnosed in college. And at that point, I had learned so many skills on my own that I didn't feel that I needed any really support. But through the grade school, school was hard for me. And I was tutored early on, and I did not read until 4th grade. So, and reading is still more of a challenge. I love audiobooks. So I'm coming also from a dyslexic parent, and now I have 2 girls that are dyslexic. But their journey has been, very different than mine. And we do have a family history once you start educating yourself, that my husband, I think, has some dyslexia. I do. And so obviously it's kind of passed on. We look at it as a huge gift. Pretty much it means you're going to be a rock star, but school's going to be hard. And I think that is where I've learned the last 15 years on how to support my children through the school. The first sign for my older daughter, who was diagnosed when she was 5, which is, considered fairly early. We've moved around a lot, and we were in New York City. We were at a private school. And I saw some signs early on that we started tutoring, that I thought maybe we can get a hold of this early. Really the phonics, not able to really understand, going over and over, very, repetitive and then forgetting it the next day. So I started
Mm-hmm.
seeing some things, but professionals kept telling me you can't diagnose it till 5 or 6. Finally, in kindergarten, when she was so behind in the reading, and she was kind of doing the reading of like See Jane Run, and obviously in New York City, these kids that aren't dyslexic are reading Harry Potter very soon. So we
Mm-hmm.
started noticing some things. We also, sometimes with dyslexia, it's not alone. There's anxiety, there's ADD, there's ADHD. They kind of go in combination. So we started noticing things as well. And I know I also suffer from anxiety and ADD. So I kind of started seeing those signs, and we took her to a neuropsychologist and gave us all of these certain diagnoses, and was said there is no doubt she is severely dyslexic. We're not even on the
Mm-hmm.
mild, moderate, and this is going to be a tough road. And he was very honest, which I really appreciated, but I really had no clue what my next step was. Um, and the school was going at a speed that my daughter just could not keep up. So, as I call it now to all the parents out there, warrior parents, I went into warrior mode,
Right.
and I just seeked out everything that I could. I talked to every professional. I also knew that my daughter needed some occupational therapy with writing, because her fine motor skills and her writing was on the weak side, which tends to happen. So I started speaking to all of these occupational therapist, and started just gathering as much information as I could. We were only in New York for a 2-year period. So I knew we live in San Diego, and I started researching all the schools, and I was very frustrated. I could not find a school that would be a good fit. My daughter's extremely social. We are an out of the box family. We do have entrepreneurship in the family. And so I was frustrated by the fact that we couldn't have personalized learning.
Mm-hmm.
So I started looking all over the country. We do have family in Atlanta, and I researched a school there that is an amazing dyslexic school, Orton Gillingham.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's where we are, Atlanta, and
yes,
we had several options, which was amazing.
several.
So many moms don't have those options, and so we're lucky that we're in Atlanta, where we have several schools to choose from.
Yes. And so, I mean, and parents are talking about it more openly. I find in San Diego
Mm-hmm.
that I'm still, trying to break down some barriers. But my daughter had just at 5 and 6 in kindergarten had stopped just wanting to go to school. We were crying every
Mm-hmm.
day. She was, she's so smart. She understood that she could not read, and she started comparing herself. And I
Right.
started to see the self-esteem go down. And that's the most important thing, is that we have
Mm-hmm.
to keep our kids and their self-esteem up. And so we called the school, and they said, I'm sorry, we don't have a spot. I said, let my daughter work her magic. And she did. And we got in, and we moved to Atlanta for 2 years to go to the school. And that's where I think really where I was able to learn so much and get support from other moms as this new
Mm-hmm.
journey. I also have another younger daughter that was diagnosed at 5. We knew the signs much earlier, so we did get her some support earlier than we were able to get my older daughter. But again, they wouldn't officially diagnose her until a little bit later. But we knew all the signs, so we started therapy very early on. She also had a lot of other challenges than my older daughter. They're very different dyslexic.
Right.
And they're different than I am. There's not one size fits all.
Exactly.
So I started to just continue to help support them in any way I could. It looks different every year. I tell parents once you get something down, don't get your hopes up that that's going to be the therapy forever. It changes as your child changes, and you have to be flexible with that.
Yeah, I think that's a big key to that flexibility, because as you were talking about the self-esteem and the anxiety, and I realized early on when we started our immersion school was that one of the teachers said, we had some other diagnoses that happened. And I was just kind of like, I thought we knew kind of a direction. And she's like, it's like peeling an onion. You're going to keep finding pieces. And when you get blocked with remediation, it may be because there's another piece you haven't found yet. And so that was really helpful. And I told her, I said, I love that you used peeling an onion, because yes, you just have to have another good cry and then figure out what you're going to do next. And so, yeah, so remediation, and I know, for everyone it's different, but yet there are some overlaps. So when you when you talk about your first daughter coming to Atlanta and going through, a specialized school, what did that remediation look like for her and for y'all as a family? What were some things that you did, or that, because I'm thinking from parents' perspective that are new on this journey, should I expect this to look like? And we did something similar. We didn't move that far, but we actually moved a little over an hour. So we were on the south side of Atlanta. There was nothing on the south side. So we actually picked up and moved on like 60 miles from our house. And so the first year I was commuting 3 hours round trip to my job. I mean, it was a lot of family sacrifice. And so, but we do what we have to do, like you said, as warrior moms, to make sure they get what they need. But as people are listening, what could a mom expect that first year, or when they're first figuring things out, and what does that remediation kind of look like from a home perspective for y'all?
Right. I think, trying to educate yourself. And first of all, I wish someone had said, it's going to be okay. There's going to be bumps in the road. You're going to figure it out, and you're going to have people put into your life that will help and support you. And if they aren't, then you need to go out and seek that support. Because first of all, the caretaker, the mom, the dad, whomever is helping, the grandparents, they need to be in a place to educate themselves, but also emotionally okay. I went into panic mode. My children felt that, and I am the one that really helps support all of my children in this way, because my husband was working and, starting his own company. So it really was me. And I just started reading. I started looking for blogs. I started, seeking information. I started asking everybody that I knew, do you know anyone dyslexic? I know I am. I started really writing a lot about myself and thinking about my own journey and trying to understand, because I think the children need to know that if someone in their family is dyslexic, and if you don't know who that is, to start talking about other people that are dyslexic. We have pictures all over our home of successful entrepreneurs that are dyslexic. Whatever your child is into, if it's soccer, whatever, there are dyslexics, and people are talking about it now. They weren't back then, so I had to really look, for those people. But I think starting to talk and have that conversation with your family, and that it's not a secret, it's something that we're proud of. Everyone has something. Sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't. Really talking about that, and what the strengths are for dyslexia and what the weaknesses are, because we all have those. And I find that now my children are also mentoring other children that are dyslexic or ADD or anxiety or mental health, whatever it is. And they are proud of that, and they're open. So I think really starting within your own family and really talking about that and seeking information and making sure that your children feel okay about it. And when they don't, and they come home crying, know that it's going to be okay. But there is going to be a lot of extra work in that, as the mom or the dad, that you're going to be at the school talking to the teachers, depending on how educated they are on dyslexia. So you need to have a village and a team to help support your child. And you can do that one step at a time. And so I know, for me, I was so overwhelmed when I first was diagnosed that I started looking in every direction. Right. And I also tell my clients, I don't want to overwhelm you. I want to give you 3 things to work on when you're first diagnosed. Then you get those down in your family, and then let's go to the next steps. A lot of professionals are giving you a lot of information, and I found that it was just too much for me to take in. So I think little information at a time is important. The first part is really making sure that your school that your child is at is educated. Do they know what dyslexia is? Is there anyone at their school that is dyslexic? Usually dyslexics can spot another dyslexic. I've had lots of teachers say, oh, I'm dyslexic, I know your daughters. And this is before they were diagnosed. So I love that part of it. But I think surrounding yourself with a team, making sure your school knows, and if they don't, having a meeting with them, specifically the teacher and the principal, and starting that process of what that looks like for them. And it's, like you said, it's different for everybody. Obviously you want to get them evaluated You and your when you do have your evaluation, they usually give you some nice suggestions, but I find that it's also very overwhelming. So then I think after you get the school involved, get some parents, really explain to your friends, your group, your family, what your child is dealing with. Having your team, your village be informed about dyslexia is going to be very important for the child.
Right. And I love what you said earlier too, because when you were talking a few minutes ago about, you really do have to start with home and how you frame things. And as we talked about earlier, the warrior moms, it does start off with you kind of working through your own emotions and your own shame and grief, and you're working through all these things, but at the same time, remembering, how your child sees things through your eyes sometimes and through how you respond to things. And so, I, it is to me so important, that relationship with your child, but also framing it that it's not, a bad diagnosis. It just means you think differently. And I know when we shared it with our daughter, she's in fourth grade now, but when we found out in first grade, we did talk to her about, Steve Jobs and some different people, and, really, and we still do when she's interested in certain things like coding and things like that, or science. I had an MIT professor on that's dyslexic on the podcast because my daughter had said, I think I want to be a chemist. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool. So I found a chemist to interview for the show. So, just trying to figure out ways to, I guess, take the stigma away, if you will, as to, it being more of a disability, but really a learning difference. And so I love that that's part of the emphasis that you have in your home, but also that you share with other moms, that, it really is going to take a team. But at the beginning, we all acknowledge that it is very overwhelming. Myself and my husband have our background in education, and then but I went to law school, but prior to that, all my degrees were in education, and I felt completely overwhelmed. So I can't imagine for the families that don't understand the IEP language and don't understand the evaluation language, how even more overwhelming that must feel. And so I love that part of it, because that's one of the things I share with my moms too, is sometimes you just need a journal and you just need to kind of work through those, because for us, it seems like, it is getting better as far as having conversations in the community. But for our generations, we were probably dyslexic and didn't know it, right? Like no one, they sent us to our room to study more or whatever, but no one knew really even though it's been around for forever, the schools weren't identifying it. So like you were saying, many times along this journey, if you didn't know, let's say, for example, you didn't know you had dyslexia in your family, and now you realize, oh, well, someone around here is probably dyslexic. You start going through those emotions yourself. I know that happened in our household. My husband was like, yeah, I do that. Do I do that because I'm dyslexic? I was like, oh, I don't. So it's like you're juggling everything at once inside your family unit.
You are, and you need support. I always say, I know sometimes we put ourselves last, but really you need to put yourselves first in this, and making sure that your emotions are in check. And because, like you said, you are feeling, wow, am I dyslexic? And so I started going through my own emotional feelings, because I grew up thinking I was dumb, and I was told, you know what, you're never going to be able to do this. And then as my children were told, especially my younger one, because she had some physical delays, and we had to go to physical therapy, several doctors told me along the way, don't expect anything from your child. We don't know what her life will look like. And I always say, interesting. Well, thank you for saying that. But the Blakeleys will always be okay. We will fight through this. And we don't compare ourselves to anyone else. We only compare to ourselves and what our progress is. And that's another big thing, is that it took me a long time to not compare my child to my friends' children, because no one at the time that I knew that had children, they were dyslexic. No one was talking about it. Now, a lot of them are, but they were getting diagnosed much later.
Right.
But I, many a nights, would cry and say, worry about my children. Are they going to be, okay? What, or, I see all these other children doing this and mine isn't. And I really had to teach myself that I only look at my children for their own progress and compare to their own progress. If they're making progress, that's the most important. I'm not going to compare them. And that's something I still have to work on daily. And I always tell parents, really only look at your child's progress. Don't compare them next to your friends.
Right. And I think that's hard too, especially where we are now with social media, because I know even early on before we, there was stuff going on, there was speech, there were things going on, there were signs now that I'm like, why didn't I see that? That we all go through. But at the time I would see on social, my friend, talk about, oh, look, a picture, my son's in the back seat reading, on the way to school, or, her best friend's reading a chapter book, and something's just not right, but you haven't put your finger on it yet. But then you see all this around you, and you do feel very isolated. You don't want to raise your hand and say, well, we can't remember the sight words that we remembered on Tuesday, and now it's Thursday and we've forgotten those 5, because people just don't talk about that stuff more or less on social, unless you're, in some kind of private Facebook group. But as you're seeing your friends on your feed and stuff, and even in IG, you're seeing all the highlight reels, as they say. And so I think that part is also difficult early on, like you were saying a moment ago, about finding your team and talking to your friends and family and really educating from within, so that they can educate as well, but so they can also, really support you and your family and your child's growth. That's going to be essential.
Absolutely. And I think also making sure that your child's mental health with this, because there is social media. I didn't have social media, but I was comparing myself in the classroom. But now there's social media and it's everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so I really think that you have to, really support your child. And if that's therapy, or if you have family, whatever that looks like that you're comfortable with, you have to make sure that your child knows where their strengths are. So that's why I say, always, as soon as you're diagnosed, go find that strength. If it's sports, if mm-hmm. it's coding, if it's, business, whatever that mm-hmm. is, go do that, and do that a lot more than the other things, because you need to boost up your child's confidence in every way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about, having said that, what do you wish you had known or done sooner? Is there anything now looking back, you're like, I wish I had known to do this sooner? As we talked about off the air, that we all make mistakes and that we're learning from those so that we can pass that along to others. Is there anything that sticks out to you that you're like, I wish I had done that sooner or differently?
I wish I would have, first of all, taken care of myself. I had my own emotions going on and I was seeking out, but I could see I was also not in a state that was super helpful for my children. I was panicked inside, and they can feel that. So I wish I would have taken a moment for myself to figure that out and given myself a little bit more support in mm-hmm. that. And I think that would have helped my children. I also did way too many therapies with my children. I was so concerned that I was seeking lots of different therapies in different ways, and it was too much for my children. And they were going from 7 a.m. till 7 or 8 p.m, and it was too much. And I burned them out. And I was so worried inside that I was ready to try anything. And I wish I would have just chosen 1 or 2 and focused on that. Because I think one therapist did overstimulate my daughter's brain, and it took us a long time to come back from that. And also to make sure that this professional is someone that you feel comfortable with, and that you have a referral, and that they have an educational background, because a lot of these people are not licensed. So you do have to be careful. So that is one thing that I went down, a wrong path. We've come back from that, thank goodness. Right. But I know I have a lot of clients are taking loans out to help mm-hmm. their children. So I just always, and there's some therapies that do not have that do not work for the time that the child is first diagnosed. I'm like, that is something you can do later, right. but not now. So it's also timing. Yeah. So that's where I really try to help mm-hmm. families and clients on what is the proper timing. Right. And
what's the priority? And it's hard, because I did the same thing at the beginning, because then and that's one of the reasons we ended up at an immersion school ourselves, is because I was thinking through, we were on speech, and then we did do a little OT, and then we also had after school tutoring, and we started seeing, the stomach hurts, and she did like school, but she started having symptoms where she didn't feel well, even after being diagnosed. And that's when we realized we were going to have to ramp this thing up, right? Like we were going to have to go 4 or 5 days a week. And I was like, you know what? Why don't we look at and just go ahead and invest in her going to a different school where all day long, everything's OG. Everybody's trained. She has her tutor, and I know everybody can't do that, but we were able to find a school where she was able to get her tutoring in the building. And so the only outside thing we're doing now is speech, because I did, like you were saying, I did want her to have the opportunity to have a life outside of school. And I did realize early on, fortunately, that we need to nurture those pieces that are their gifts. And I know some people go, well, this is not a gift. Dyslexia. You're right. It is hard. It is some hard academic years. But as you know, and we know, there are a lot of successful adults, and some were remediated and some were not early on. But the part is if we have to find their passion and be able to help them continue to do that. And so I love that you said that, because I think early on we all feel like we got a kitchen sink, just throw everything in and see what happens. And then I realized, okay, and what I tell the moms I work with is we have to decide what's the priority right now. And then,
Exactly.
and that's hard sometimes when you're, especially at the beginning, it is so hard to get clarity around that, because there are so many, just not so many unknowns. And like you said, just trying to get connected with a community where, who is a good referral. And just because you found them in a Facebook group doesn't necessarily mean they're a good referral. So, really doing your work. And like you said, as a warrior mom, I mean, you take on just a whole new, just a whole new set of skills that you didn't know you were going to have to help your children be successful, because, that's obviously what we want. And so I love that that's a piece that you're sharing, though, that, we do try to do too much, and sometimes we try to do it too much too soon. And I think a good piece to wrap that question up too is, and you probably did that, you didn't share that yet, but is watching the signs from our children, because we can sometimes tell when we've overloaded them, right? And so we're like, okay, well, maybe we need to decide, is there something we can pull back on? And that's the part of parenting. This is a process, and it is fluid, and it's fine if you get in. I know some people are like, we signed up for this, we're going to stick with this. Sometimes it's okay to say, you know what, we've overloaded ourselves, we've overloaded our family, and to take a step back on some things. I do think it's unfortunate, though, sometimes, because it just happens how it happens, that parents decide to pull their gift piece out, right? There's, okay, well, we've got to do all these therapies, and so we're going to take soccer away. And so then your child's in school all day, stressed out, trying to get through the day, and then they have all afternoon and evening with homework and therapies. They have to have an outlet. So I love that you're sharing that, because that is just one of the priorities we have to put on that, is giving them that opportunity, not only as an outlet, but for something that they have passion for and they excel at. So they do have that self-esteem that comes back. And so I love that you share that as well, because it's just, to me, one of those key pieces of dyslexia, because it really does unlock so much for them.
Yes. And letting go of the guilt. I had a lot of guilt when my children were younger. And I've learned to let go of that. And also the expectations of what I thought my children were going to look like. And I think that was a process for me. And as soon as I did, and I really saw my girls for who they are and what gifts they have, everything really calmed down in our home a lot. And consistently telling them it's going to be okay. It really is. And sometimes that it looks like every day after school when they are coming home, crying and feeling different. And no matter if you say, we've always said, I'm the dyslexic mom, I'm known, dyslexics rock. I'm always so positive, but also letting them feel those emotions that, it is hard. And that, you're going to work really hard, but that's also work ethic our family works 10 times harder than a non-dyslexic family. And that's also a gift, a big. And so I always want to come back to the child but making sure that you're listening to them. They have strong emotions, and they're very different than your own.
So what would you say if someone asked you, what is the most challenging piece of parenting a child or children with dyslexia? What do you see as the most challenging, and not necessarily in a negative way, but it's a challenge. It's different than maybe what you expected or what your friends or family are going through, and it's been a personal challenge to figure that piece out.
Yeah, I think it's constantly trying new things that work for your child and your family. And the flexibility, I wasn't very flexible as a new parent, and learning the flexibility of all that, and that there's a lot of frustration in the family. And my friends that don't have a child that's dyslexic aren't experiencing that frustration. So, and then keeping all of our, like the child's confidence up and our family's confidence up. And again, the comparing, I think, is, another challenging for new parents that have recently been diagnosed, and just managing all of that. And then again, not having guilt about not being able to manage it, and to finding someone or whomever it is that can help you manage it. I found a lot of other parents can work with their child that are dyslexic, and they're like, I can tutor them. I'm dyslexic myself, and I have my own challenges, and I was never able to do that. And so I knew pretty quickly on, I'm going to have to hire someone that can do it, and not feeling guilty about that, but that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. What about the most rewarding? I'm sure there's lots of rewards to parenting children with dyslexia. What are some of the rewards you would want to share?
Well, I love now that you're an out of the box family. You are different, and that is such a gift. And there are so many gifts in it all. And that your child thinks out of the box. I mean, my girls come up with things I would have never known at their age.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, wow, to see the world that way and to solve a problem that way is exciting, because all
Hmm.
the innovators are doing that. And I always say, one day, if you want to, you can change the world. And wow, how amazing is that? So I love being out of the box. I love that my kids think of things. And I pretty much say, I mean, you can be a CEO, an inventor, and a programmer, and whatever their interest is, go for it. So there are so many rewarding things, I think, now that I can see that I didn't really see early on. Um, and that having these challenges, really, it's okay. And that we all have challenges, physical, anything
Absolutely.
mental. And so knowing that you have that, and being able to seek out other friends and explaining, like my girls say, I'm dyslexic. Do you know what that feels like? If you have friends that are and they understand, great. But if you have friends that aren't, really being able to explain that to them and what it feels like for you, and not being able to read.
Absolutely. You talked a few minutes ago earlier on about just, moms, you talked about yourself, but I think it's a good generality to moms that we tend to put our own needs last, and we tend to try to pour from an empty cup many days. So what are some, maybe what's one or what are a few of your favorite self-care practices now? What are some things you put in place that you're like, these just help, rejuvenate me and give me time to recharge?
Yes. For me, it's exercise. I have anxiety myself, and it really helps me deal with all that's coming my way. So, exercise is non negotiable. I mean, it cannot be. So, for me, it's exercise. I do love time alone, quiet. Our house is very loud a lot, especially with online school and working from home. So I like to just sit outside. So time alone for me, I'm a big journaler of, I love to journal my feelings out. That's really been a gift from since I was in fifth grade. And then adventures. I love adventures with my husband.
They sound great. I just think it's important to highlight, those pieces, because if we are not able to function, then we're just not. And you're right. I think you said this earlier, even is that, we do, especially when we're in that panic mode, or we're in those first few days or weeks or months, we're trying to just take everything in. And many times we just don't take time for ourselves to really just kind of process and give ourselves that space. And so I always like to ask people about self-care, because it's so essential. And sometimes it's kind of a roller coaster, right? There's seasons where you're like, okay, I'm just going to have to put that on the back burner. But then once you get to a place of clarity that you're like, you know what, I can't though, because I can't serve my family if I don't take care of myself. So I think that's an important piece to share. So let me ask you this final question. So as moms that are listening that may have just found out recently, or maybe they're just in their first few weeks or months of on this journey of dyslexia with their family, what's some advice you would want them to know before we close out today?
I think to take a deep breath, know that it's going to be okay, and to educate yourself as much as you can. If it's reading a book, finding a friend that's very supportive and that will let you vent, even if they haven't been down that road, or a professional anyone that can really provide that support for you as you process it yourself. Um, and that and knowing that you're going to make it to the other side. I am now, I have my child's 15 and 12. I feel like I'm on the other side. We have put all the hard work in the last 10 years, and I'm on the other side. And so I feel I'm able to give hope. So finding someone that's able to give you hope that it's going to be okay. And really, again, I always go back to this, but that every stage is different. And if you're in a very difficult stage, no, it's going to change. You can always count on that. So, I always say, for me personally, it's really finding that emotional support. And if you're able to get that, then you're able to get to family.
Absolutely. Well, Cassie, I so appreciate you and your time, and I appreciate you sharing your story and your family's story about dyslexia. And I just, appreciate all that you're doing as well, and will continue to follow you in your work. And I appreciate all that you're doing, for the dyslexia community as well. So thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm sorry. I always say, thank you so much. I mean, dyslexics rock, and I've always said that on it, and it is a gift. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening today, and happy Mother's Day to you. You are an amazing warrior mom, and together we can do hard things, right? Are you new to dyslexia? If you are and you're looking for more resources, then go to dyslexiamomlife.com/start here, where I have resources for you from blog articles, other podcast episodes you can listen to, and also free resources. And do you want to connect with our guest this month? Then be sure to go to dyslexiamomlife.com to find each of the episodes listed there from this month, so you can connect with all these amazing moms on our podcast. And we have a special episode that we're going to be releasing on May 31st, so you don't want to miss that. Be sure to subscribe, though, because we are going to be releasing these Mother's Day episodes throughout the month of May. Have a great day, and remember, you got this.